After 3 difficult projects, I'm going to embark on a new journey to turn the 4 seasons into books, each one inspired by one of my favorite games. Today we're starting with spring, featuring a cute game called Turnip Boy. I start by tearing off seeds from this paper pad, making sure to mess up a few in the process. Not again! I fold the pages in half to prepare them for binding, and this time I mark and cut a thick sheet of paper with the notes on the side to act as a guide for the holes I will punch. But I made it too short the first time and had to do it a second one. I punched holes in the folded paper, and I must say, these are pretty lined up and they appear much better than the ones in my hunter's journal. This time I want to have a flat square spine, so instead of cords, I'll use flat tapes that I cut out of linen. They should fit snugly between 2 rows of holes. As for binding the text block, I do the same steps I used on my hunter's journal, meaning I weave a waxed purple thread between the holes, but wrapping outside the tape instead of a cord. To connect each page to the previous one, I do a fancy knot called a kettle stitch at the end. Once I am done, I apply some way to keep the pages nice and flat and spread a generous amount of wood glue anywhere but on the tapes. To fit my spring theme, for the front cover I'm going to use polymer clay to recreate these vines and flowers I designed, plus the protagonist's soil sword from the game. It's my second time using polymer clay, so let's see how that goes. First, I place parchment paper on the book covers to protect them, the covers that you haven't seen me make yet. Shh, I'll get to those in a sec. I run some clay through a small pasta machine, and then cut thin rectangles that I roll between my fingers to create the main body of the vines. The flower petals are made by pinching a square piece of clay and manipulating it into an almond shape with a silicone tool. Same goes for the smaller petals, they are just much smaller and thus harder to work with. With my petals done, I arrange them alternating between big and small, and finally, I squeeze a small ball of clay at the center to act as the anthers. Now I can also arrange the vines into waves and place a flower at each corner. The last thing is these tiny leaves, which I make by folding in half a small noodle of clay and pinching the end until it resembles a cartoonish leaf. I do this many times and place them at the sides of the vines. For the sword, I squeeze and prod a chunk of clay into the shape of the blade and attach a thick noodle on the top to be the handle. I wrap a thinner noodle around the handle, and as for the big leaves, I shape them and score a line at the center. Another thin noodle goes on top of the blade, and I hide the upper end under the left leaf. While the clay pieces bake, I'll make the rest of the decorations, starting with the headbands. I fold a long piece of linen in half, apply glue and place a waxed ring in between. After the whole thing dries, I start threading the colors. I chose orange and green to make the journal bright and playful. I think the result came out really nice. To secure the edges, I apply some wood glue at the bottom. To make the bookmarks, I'll use orange and green satin ribbons, folding them in half and cutting at an angle to get the perfect split shape. To finish them off, I seal the edges with the tiniest amount of wood glue. To attach them to the text block, I place them roughly in the middle and glue the other ends at the spine with uhu glue, cause wood glue doesn't work with satin ribbons. While I'm at it, I'll trim the headbands to the appropriate length and glue them at the top and bottom of the spine, this time using wood glue. Back to my clay pieces, I start painting the vines a few coats of dark green using thinned acrylic paints. The soil sword gets an appropriate soil brown, while the big leaves and the thin vine at the center are painted with a bright green. Finally, the handle gets a dark green as well, and I don't have any footage of me painting the flowers pink. Oops. This time I'll make the cover separately and attach the text block later, a binding technique called bridal binding. I'll use a thin piece of cardboard that I had lying around, cutting 2 pieces with my utility knife by scoring a bunch of shallow lines. Then I clean the edges with a piece of sandpaper. The one thing that I don't like about my hunter's journal is that the covers are hard to open and close, so I'll try to remedy this by adding soldiers to the book. The idea is that you weave a piece of paper between the covers and the spine stiffener, as you can see in this diagram. So I have to measure the thickness of the text block and of one of the covers to derive the thickness of the spine stiffener using this formula. To construct the stiffener, I'll cut a bunch of little strips out of a box of cereal that I will stack and glue so that I achieve my target thickness. For the assembly, I first tried printing paper, but then switched to linen, because it immediately teared apart. I use wood glue and various pointy tools to push the linen down the edges of the spine stiffener and the cardboards. I apply some weight and let the glue dry overnight. Before we continue, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreons and YouTube members. With your support, I can buy more art supplies and tools to make bigger and more ambitious crafting projects. Thank you so much for helping me make my art dreams become a reality. I hope you like the results! Okay, now back to the video. Since I'm saving the thick leather that I have left for the long-awaited Silk Song Journal, I need to use an alternative. Good thing that I have this cheaper, thinner leather in abundance. This leather I cannot carve, but I'm going to attach the polymer clay decorations on it, which is hopefully equally cool. First I mark the outside of the covers, as well as a buffer zone for gluing. Then I roughly cut the leather with my scissors and trim the edges with a rolling knife. I need to attach the spine first, using glue, pushing the leather down into the crevasses using a bone folder and lots of water to soften the leather and make it more malleable. For the design that I have in mind, I'll need to remove an oval piece from the center before I glue the rest of the leather to the covers. So I print an oval, stack it temporarily on the cardboard with double-sided tape, and paint the edges blue, so that when I place the leather on top, I'm left with an imprint of the oval. I'm sure there are better ways to transfer the right measurements, but I haven't figured them out yet. So I'm doing the first thing that comes to mind. I carefully cut out that piece, and apply glue on the cardboard to place a sheet of gold leaf. Once it dries, I'm left with this nice little golden window that should hopefully represent a bright sun where my soil sword will be placed. I cut the corners at a 45-degree angle using a rolling knife. Now I can glue the rest of the leather with wood glue, using of course plenty of water. Fold the leather and keep it in place with clamps until the glue dries. For the end sheets, I bought this nice end paper with plant patterns on it, but it is way too short, so I'm going to construct my own fancy end sheets. I mark a big piece of folded paper in the size that I need and trim the patterned end papers accordingly. I'll use 2 of them for each end sheet. To glorify the empty space around them, I will use more gold leaf. The vibe of the whole project was embracing my mistakes, even though technically this was not a mistake, since I just could not find the right size of end paper. Once I'm done gluing, I brush off the excess gold leaf. With the golden trim done, I can glue the patterned end papers. I first tried wood glue, but after realizing that this created ugly wrinkles, I switched to uhu glue, using a ruler to smooth them out. I think we can all agree that gold and green are just stunning together. Finally, I stitched the completed end sheets to the text block. Time to join cover and text block. After I glue the spine and let it dry, I'll also glue the tapes to the covers for extra strength, placing some baking paper to protect the end sheets. At least I learn from my mistakes? Yes, I do. I apply weight and let them dry. Don't judge my choices in books. I'm what is called a book girly. If you know, you know. Following my design, I place my finished vines with flowers on top of my front cover and mark 2 squares with a pencil, then engrave the lines by dragging this tool. The square I created will have a darker brown color according to my plans. I said I would not be doing any carving, but I just couldn't help myself. So I'll cut the lines with my swivel knife, then punch them with my square tool as far as the thin leather allows. The effect in the end is minimal, but still noticeable. Since I've started, might as well carve Turnip Boy himself on the back cover. The book is featuring his game after all. I print and cut the character, but alter the position of his legs in a more natural form, as well as give him an open-mouthed smile. Then I use a small ball stylus to trace the pattern to the leather. I will again first carve the lines, then start punching to add depth in various places. I'm also adding texture this time, using these texture tools, to the outer leaves on top of his head and to the inside of his mouth. I'll dye the covers with these brown leather paints I mixed with water. They contrast well with the green of the vines, just like a tree bark. I guess nature was onto something. I am again saving the neat food oil that I have left for this silk-sewn journal. Yes, we get it. So I will only use water to moisten the leather. This made me realize that the oil was actually helping spread the paints evenly, as this time the result was uneven, ugly patches that refused to penetrate the leather, so I'll definitely need to buy some more oil. For the eyes and the mouth of Turnip Boy, I paint them dark brown straight from the bottle. The natural color of the leather is the perfect Turnip Boy color, but I've messed up some spots and cannot remove the brown paint, so I'm going to, say it with me, embrace my mistakes and pretend the spots are dirt from the ground. In fact, I'll exaggerate the effect by adding various brown dots. Then I'll paint the leaves 2 shades of green and paint the tiny spine green too. After the paint dries, I secure the clay decorations on the front cover using super glue, which surprisingly worked. Baked polymer clay retains some of its flexibility, so I'm able to stretch the vines a little in the right position. To glue the sword, I scratch off some of the gold leaf at the center and use more super glue. Finally, I will cover the entire book with some leather cream. And yes, I should have done that before gluing the decorations. Once it dries, I rub off the excess cream and paint with a paper towel, using a cotton tab for the tight spots around the leaves, flowers and vines. To prettify the inside, I hide the messy sides of the covers with the end seats, using uhu glue and pressing the book shut. And with that, my book of spring is done! Thank you for watching. See you on the next one!